B11.
All right, and Helen Poplawski acting as chair today. Hopefully a few others will be joining us. It sounds like at least one person will. And I appreciate all of you being here today. We can't adopt the minutes yet since we don't have a quorum quite. So I'll just go ahead and jump in with a review for the record about the vote for the resolution that happened at the end of August, since that was electronic. So for the official record, after that resolution was passed unanimously on August 6th, there were amendments that were made by some members that then required the committee to vote again. And that vote happened electronically because of the short time frame between when the changes were made and when it needed to be submitted. So after the amendments were made, the committee voted unanimously to again support that resolution. So now that that is in the record, I'm going to go ahead and also do a review of that presentation in the meeting. And I'm sorry if there is noise in the background. My animal child is playing with himself right now. So, but yes, so the resolution we presented, or Sarah and Rajesh presented to the Community Development, Housing, and General Government Committee meeting on September 15th. The members of that committee are Councilmember Adams, Councilmember Scipio, Councilmember Clark, and Councilmember Bessie. And then we also had Councilmember McIntosh present, as well as Councilmember Parman and Councilmember Larson. So Rajesh started with his presentation with a little bit of background, general information, and then opened it up for questions to the members of that committee. So Clark had asked about what the county passed. So there was a little bit of discussion about the differences between this resolution and the county one. Councilmember Scipio asked for some information about why the sustainability staff did not support the resolution. So all of the information that I had included in that information item, and again, most of that had been shared to the committee previously. I just reiterated that. So none of it was new. Each council member had that in their packet already. Then Councilmember Adams thought it was helpful to remind the committee that because it was an information item, the way that we presented it, it did not require a vote from the committee to either pass it or veto it. So it was more just for their information and for their discussion. Then we had Councilmember Bessie mention that he also wasn't comfortable with the resolution as it was presented and had mentioned requesting some simplified language and maybe shortening the resolution. And so he wanted to see some changes there before he felt like he was comfortable supporting it. Councilmember Larson then commented he was happy that there was something being presented by this committee, our sustainability committee, and then agreed that he thought that it would be useful to be sent to utilities if utilities was going to be included in this resolution because of the way that their operations work. And then he also was open to having more input and adjustment to that resolution. So after the meeting was over, Councilmember Bessie did send me some specifics, which I'm going to share with you guys. So some of the things that he noted that he would like to see changed before he could support this resolution included more realistic percentage goals, timelines, and commitments that are included in there. He wanted to see number 6, the one referencing that federal legislation. He thought that could be removed from the resolution. And then he, again, just wanted to reiterate paring it down a little bit, making it shorter, maybe a little bit closer to what the county passed. So those were his specifics that he wanted to make sure that the committee was aware of. So I'm going to stop there. That's just a brief overview. If you guys did watch it, we appreciate it. But for anyone who maybe hasn't had a chance yet, that's just a quick version of what happened. So I'm going to open it now up to you guys to discuss the resolution, the changes, or any other discussion you want to have around that. So. And would it be helpful? I can pull up the resolution if you guys want to look at it together. I don't know if that'd be helpful.
Oh, what are the next steps now? Do we, are we supposed to now amend it and then resubmit?
Yes, that's the idea. They would be looking for it at the November meeting. So ideally, if you guys are able to make those changes and we're able to vote today, that would be great. If not, we can always hold a special meeting of this committee just as a way to specifically address that. But yes, the goal is to now amend the resolution, take in the feedback that was provided by the members of that committee at the meeting, and then also these comments, and then represent it to be voted on.
Okay, well, I have some just generic comments. Hey, Dane. So we can add Dane to the roll call. So one of the things that came to my mind is we cannot go to the council with a discordant message where the committee recommends one thing and the city sustainability department or the city employees recommend something else. So we gotta actually resolve our differences, opinions, have a very good debate here so we can agree on something before we take it to them. Because you know, it just looks bad that we go, then you go and we have a different message. So that was my first thing, that that shouldn't happen again. So we should probably try to figure out what exactly, we're here to push the city harder than business as usual, because business as usual got us into the climate change issue and all those things. So our job is just to kind of see how fast and hard we can push within the feasibility, reality, economic, structure that we have. And so that's our job. And your job is to probably tell us, how we can or cannot do it. And if we cannot do it, what would the city like? I mean, what would the sustainability department like in terms of funding, personnel, everything else? Because that's what we are gonna go and ask the council for. So if you need $500,000 more every year to do some projects, that's precisely what we need to go to the council with, that, hey, we can get, the mayor agreed to meet a Paris Climate Accord. Right now, we cannot, the city cannot. So my position is, are we or are we not going to meet the mayor's previous commitment? Number one. If it's yes, then let's find out what it takes to meet it. If it's no, then we should tell the city council that we should strike that out, pull out of that, because we cannot meet it. Second, the Executive Order 80, which is the governor's 40% reduction by 2025. Can we or can we not meet it? If we need to meet it, how can we meet it? That's number two. Again, if we just don't intend to meet it for whatever reason, we should tell the council we don't intend to meet it. If we intend to meet it, we should tell the council what it would take to meet it. So those are the basic ideas I have. So let's figure out how to come together and get a resolution that we can all agree on.
Sure, well, and I'll start by saying I do support what the council members' feedback all was. I support everything that they said or suggested. And to be fair, like I said, with my hesitations around supporting what was presented back in September, I had given some suggestions throughout the whole discussion process. So, I mean, that stuff was shared, but like I said, at this point, I'm supportive of what the council members have suggested. And I'll leave it up to you guys to include or not include recommendations around how to meet those very specific goals. However, as Bessie said, I believe in the meeting itself that maybe what's presented in this resolution is the pared down version, and what you all do as a committee is bring those very specific items to council and show them in a separate document what it would take to meet those goals, if that makes sense. That is just based off of what I heard him say at that meeting and what he reiterated in his email for me to share with you guys. And now that we have a couple more members on, I'll just reiterate, we got some feedback from Councilmember Bessie about the resolution, wanting to see more realistic goals, timelines, and commitments, removing number 6 that spoke to the federal legislation, and then just wanted it pared down. So just to reiterate for those folks who have just jumped on. So we're discussing those changes now. Dane, yeah.
Hi, and I'm sorry I was late. I had another committee that.
No problem.
So I think a question is to, I mean, I hear I'm sorry I didn't hear all the feedback actually from Councilman Vesey, but when we say pare it down, I'm just trying to get in a sense of what you and the council are saying. Are you saying that we need to, they would like us to avoid language that specifically ties us to commitments to meeting carbon emissions? Or is that okay, but what we need to do is be less detailed in the resolution as to how, but also provide like a supplementary nuts and bolts of the house?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when he was referring to paring it down, it was more the length of it. However, I do think that with his first request about making it more realistic, that kind of speaks to the second point that you brought up about the details. So I think the idea behind that was maybe looking at that 80% renewable energy by 2030 was, I think, ambitious in their eyes. Also was one of the things that I mentioned as a hesitation of my being able to support it. So that, I think, is an example of where they're looking for maybe a more realistic either percentage goal or a more realistic timeline for that percentage goal.
So
yeah, if that helps.
So just to follow and to kind of make sure I'm clear on this. So in paring down, we kind of talk about removing the specifics for X target by 80% by 2030, kind of that language. But are we still looking at a resolution that reaffirms a city council's commitment to the mayor climate agreement?
That part's up to you. They didn't name any of the specific targets or goals that they wanted to see removed or changed. I'm just assuming based off of the reactions in that meeting and based off of the feedback that I heard them say. So if your ultimate goal is to just reaffirm things that have already been signed or supported, that's one thing. But I think the fact that there are 7 specific goals it's a 2-page resolution, that's just a little bit longer than they're used to. And I think that's mostly what they're looking to reduce is the number of specific things.
The reason I'm trying to get at this is that it seems like, and I agree with Rajesh, that we all kind of need to be on the same, all of us need to be on the same page if we're going to get a city council to approve anything, and that includes you. And since you are saying you're in agreement with city council, we got to kind of be all on the same page coming into the room, right? So if the council is okay with the idea that we're recommitting or committing to holding to the standards of the mayor's climate agreement, that's great. My concern, right, is that I think Rajesh and others, we've worked in language, those specific steps like 80% reduction by 2030 are the essential steps in order to get to the thing that we are affirming that we want to stand by. So I have a hard time in my own head. Like, I mean, I could say I could write it as two separate documents. We could keep a short resolution, reaffirm that we want to abide by or meet the goals of the mayor's climate agreement, and leave it there and say, here's a supplemental material. But it's in the supplemental material, if we're going to say that, the supplemental material has to say that we're going to reduce carbon emissions by very significant percentages by 2030. Like, you can't have the one without the other, because that's how you get to the other. And so I'm a little confused as to what would get the approval of you coming out of this committee.
Yeah, well, in that case, I think then maybe not holding ourselves to that strict of 80% in 10 years is significant without any other details of how we're going to do that. And that's sort of where my hang up is, because I'm going to be the one put in charge of that. And we're starting at 0 or that 6% that Duke Energy contributes. And that's a lot, considering we don't have any solar systems owned by the city right now. We're not, those suggestions in the past have not been met favorably. And there was even a comment by Councilmember Clark at that same meeting, who now seems to have hesitations around LEDs. So considering the climate that we're working with, I think that there can be some give one way or the other. And I know that is maybe making the previous commitments that we've made maybe null, but I will say for our office, that was made under a different sustainability director. And who is no longer here, obviously. But yeah, I think there is, I think that there's still interest in this resolution. And I think that the attitudes of council seem to support the idea of something like this. But again, it seemed to me like the details of the 80% by 2030 were just a little unreasonable or too difficult to reach in the time frame given, which again are all things that I've mentioned in the past. Additionally, something you could consider doing is throwing in some kind of amendment to that, excluding utilities. Utilities takes up a huge portion of our energy use as city operations. That was something that, you know, I had mentioned before, they weren't considered. But if you were to exclude them, it wouldn't be 80% for the entire city operations, sure. But it may be more reasonable for me and my staff to look at what it takes to then meet the goals without considering what utilities contributes. I'm just throwing out ideas. If anybody else has any questions at any point about why we're discussing this, or you want clarifications.
I just saw Cliff Stackhouse here. From just listening, it appears that the conversation is around, and the conversation you had with the council is around a simplified resolution and detailed specific action plans. And as I see it, if we look in talking about a simplified resolution, it's saying, hey, take one or two things, give me some specific details, how we are going to accomplish those things and get it done, versus a broad resolution that says we're going to meet, I don't know, 80%, we want 80% by, I don't know, 2030 and 100% by 2050. Let's just say, at least this is what I'm hearing now, I guess, and from what is being suggested by, you know, Helen, in terms of what the council people want, is, you know, that simplified, whatever that one thing, I don't care if it's one thing, you know, tell me how you're going to do that one thing good, and put specific details in it, how you're going to do that, and get that done. At least that's how I'm interpreting it. Am I interpreting it incorrectly or what?
I think that sounds right. I mean, I think we can. I think we can simplify a lot out of it. I'm wondering, what has Duke Energy promised to do by 2030, 2050?
I believe it's 2050, right, Rajesh? And it was net zero carbon, something like that.
So they will be carbon neutral by 2050.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what the resolution says for us as well, carbon neutral by 2050. And then they have 20%, and this is, you have to dig in and look at what their internal commitments are. So right now they are meeting about 9% for North Carolina, and by 8%, between 8 and 9%. By 2025, they will double that. So that'll be close to 16 to 18% by 2025. And by 2030, they will be meeting 20% of their power generation with clean renewable energy. That's their internal commitment. And that is, they have invested, or they are investing that much money to achieve that goal.
I'm sorry, Raji, carbon neutral, define that again. Define carbon neutral.
Carbon neutral is the power is not coming from fossil fuels, in simpler language. So it can come from solar, wind, hydroelectric, nuclear.
Oh, okay. See, I had a misinterpretation of that. I was looking at carbon neutral, 50% of it coming from fossil fuel, 50% coming from renewable energy. That balance it out, make it neutral. Now I can start and say 5-10% back this way. So I'm glad you defined that.
And Duke has committed to 100% carbon neutral by 2050.
Okay, gotcha.
That is, they have done it. So here's my interpretation of the whole thing. During my presentation, the first thing I said about the resolution is nothing in this resolution is new. The reason I say that is the mayor had a commitment for Paris Climate Accord. And in Paris Climate Accord, there are several things, but one of them is you have to do energy efficiency. And then there's a second part that you have to start going towards carbon neutrality by 2050. And they also have the whole overall goal is we have to stop the planet from warming beyond 1.5 degrees centigrade average. And that is where the 80% resolution comes from. So the Paris Climate Accord says 1.5 degrees centigrade. That's the target. And the 80% is what we need to achieve that. Now, as time is going by, our carbon budget is shrinking faster and faster, which means our targets are going to get harder and harder. So that is the whole catch-22. So the faster we act, the better we can get there. So that is where the 80% comes from. It's not coming from my mind or Leah's mind, Dane's mind, or Helen's mind. It's what it is. So that was number one. The number two item in that thing was we are going to try to convince Duke and the residents of Winston-Salem to also try to achieve this. And there are ways I can explain how to do that. Now that is, again, try to convince people. The third resolution was, I think, the one that is the federal thing, that is support carbon taxation and dividend. Now, I'm okay to strike that out. That is a movement going through all the cities, all the federal offices, all the major companies. Basically, it's saying that carbon is more expensive than what you're paying for it. Carbon is what causes asthma. Carbon is what causes disproportionately affects minorities and sends them to emergency rooms 4 times more than the richer white folks. Or carbon is what makes COVID much worse for minorities. So there is a cost to carbon. And if there was a tax on carbon, we could start moving us away from the carbon. Now, tax is a bad word. I understand. So there is the second part of that is the dividend. So more than 65% of Americans would get a check from the feds to offset that higher tax in carbon. So majority of us will probably come out ahead. Now, if you're paying, say, $100 a month for your electricity, that cost might jump to $110, but you will get a check for $11 per month from the feds to pay towards that. So you will come out ahead. So this whole carbon dividend, carbon tax and carbon dividend thing, and all we were saying is support it. So when it goes to the federal level, they can act on it. So I'm okay to strike it out. It doesn't make a difference, an iota of difference in the city operation. So that was one that Dan Bessie really, really had an issue with. And I understand, he's running for election, and any word connected with tax is a bad word. So I'm okay to strike that out. It would have been a good show of, good faith effort to say, we want to go away from or decarbonize our economy. That was the intent. So that was the next one. There was one more item, which was the Governor Cooper's 40% energy savings or 40% reduction by 2025. That was an executive order by Governor Cooper. Can one get there? Sure, one can get there. Over the last 25 years, I've been doing these kind of projects, and it is easy to get 25% reduction in energy consumption. Easy as in, it's 8-year payback or less. That's what I mean by easy, which is a good economic model. So that was that item. And then the rest of the items one was we're doing for the minority communities and economically disadvantaged communities. We need to have programs to help them with improving their quality of life, reducing their utility bills, doing something for people who have disproportionate, burden. So that was one item. I think in today's environment of racial injustice, social inequity, I think we need to say something that we need programs. We need city to step up. And I don't tear that down.
Yeah, I'm not trying to interrupt you, but I may be on a different page than your thinking is. But if I just took one of those things you just said, I don't know, some energy efficient project, and if I remember correctly, somebody had mentioned about upgrading air conditions, as a way of just becoming more efficient and helping minority groups as well. If I just took that one thing and came up with specific details, action plans, everything's how I would do that, that wouldn't be sufficient. And if you did that first, and we've not necessarily that, but I'm just saying that is the idea. Do that, do it well. Then once that is accomplished, as far as putting it on paper, the details, then go to your second thing and do that in detail if time permits. But are we going to use that type of strategy? Are we going to use the strategy of, okay, we're going to do we're going to put down all 10 of these things, spread out ourselves in 10 different areas and try to, come up with some action plan for all 10 things? Are we going to be specific in our approach and say, let's do this and do it well and present that? I guess that's why I'm still torn between, what do we want to do what is the approach, the strategy as a group? As far as I'm concerned, I think we should take one thing, do it well. If we could find some way to identify that you have poor air conditions in different houses, different communities, and this is the action plans to how to improve that and make those households more energy efficient, thereby reducing their electric bill, and you could do that and do it well, I think job accomplished. Now, if I'm going to look at 10 things and do it poorly, then job not accomplished. I may not be on the same page with everybody else. I don't know, but so help me out here. Dan.
It seems like Mr. Stackhouse, and I'm sorry, I can't see your first name and I've forgotten it. I apologize. Lee, sorry, that Lee and Rajesh are kind of laying out two potential approaches, right? We could take it, let's start an overall approach, right? Let's try to look at the whole of the picture and say, here are the arc of what has to happen and the overall targets, and then we work our way back into the details, or do we take the small pieces working forward? And I mean, I think ultimately we need to do a bit of both. I think though, I feel like we're kind of gotten a little, not ahead of ourselves, but what I would like to know is, I feel like we're having a lot of conversation about approaches, but ultimately the limiting factor here has been a question of what's acceptable, what City Council will accept, right? And by extension, then Helen and Johnny, what your office can support. And so, have you ever tried coming up with a plan with a group of folks, and there's, if all you're getting is just like, nah, I don't like that plan, it's kind of hard to know how to go forward. I was hoping that maybe I could hear a little bit more from Helen and Johnny as to what would, if you were to write this, what would you suggest? Because I feel like we're kind of trying to figure out how to approach the problem without knowing the kind of solution we're supposed to be aiming for. And sure. So I'd like to hear more details from what would be supportable by y'all.
Yes. Well, as a reminder, back in February, I did give you guys something that the resolution version that I had adjusted that was just completely disagreed with, I guess, for lack of a better word, by you guys as being just way too vague. I think that maybe there is some middle ground, but also I would point to the title of this resolution as a way to also maybe whittle it down a little bit more. So this resolution is called Approving a Goal of Clean Renewable Energy by 2050 and Creation of Green Jobs. So the one that, was just discussed about developing programs in vulnerable communities, maybe that's a completely different resolution, and maybe that's an easy way to take one off of this particular part. Because like Lee just demonstrated, I mean, if you took that and ran with it and you provided all the details on how to do that, that very well could be a whole task for this committee to focus on at one time. And I do see how it relates to the goal of energy efficiency and helping the community get there. But there are also other communities, and I believe maybe Asheville also took out the second part about encouraging the utility in the communities, and they wanted to focus more on the internal operations of the city with their specific resolution. I've talked to the sustainability managers over there, and based on what the work they're doing, it does sound like theirs is more internally focused. So again, there's a second one that is able to be stricken from this resolution if you guys support that. So I think Lee's suggestion is a strong one in that looking more at this as a way to make it more about energy efficiency and renewable energy for city operations is going to be stronger already than including all of the things about the community and the way that the community could be affected by potential other actions. So that's one thing. Again, I mean, I've shared with you guys several ways that I think that would make me more comfortable. I'll also address number 7, which is about the strategic action plan that you suggest for my office to create. I've already basically done that just on my own accord. It was a work item for me to complete. So that's already done. And that could be something else that's taken out of this resolution to make it shorter, more concise, and more focused. And that's something I'm going to be doing anyways. So, and again, I'll remind you guys, it was suggested that You guys can also create your own plans. They don't have to be my plans. I don't want to create plans for you guys. That's not what your group is for. So
I mean, I'm sorry, I've done a lot of speaking up to, well, or getting in the way here, so I'm going to stick my foot in my mouth again. But if we need to go in front of a city council where there will be one of us and one of you and city council, and if you don't agree with the representative from the community in front of the city council, it won't pass. So if you are not willing to bend, then it really does have to be something that is close to your vision.
To be fair, that's true. However, I do think that my opinion, or not my opinion, but the information that I provide about why I don't support a resolution or why me and my staff don't, it's not necessarily always going to sway the way the council thinks. I think in this case, they wanted a little bit more explanation, and I gave it to them. And Councilmember Larson did specifically support the utilities issue I brought up. I think some of the other council members supported the idea around the feasibility of reaching the 80% in 10 years. So to be fair, I don't know that if I hadn't made those comments, I can't say that this would have been supported. I still think there would have been reservations on their part. But
I'm not speaking to that. I'm just saying in general, speaking just to the comment you made about it doesn't have to be my resolution. And it certainly, it shouldn't be just your language, but it does have to be something that you will support.
What I'm more,
it won't likely go anywhere.
What I more meant by that was that you guys can create your own plans to reach the goals that you guys set for yourselves. That I don't, so like you are functioning as your own committee, your own body. I'm here to support you guys, but you're not here to help me with my job. And I'm not here to like steer you guys in one direction or the other. I really, really want this committee to stand on their own. But when it came to this resolution, and the reason I put those things in there as to why I couldn't support it is because I shared those reservations with you guys from the beginning about why I couldn't, about what our energy manager has said and the research he has done. And then I've also spoken to other communities who are now struggling to succeed at this resolution. So, I mean, I shared that with you guys from the beginning. And because it was my job to, I felt, share that information with the council so they had all of the information that they needed to make a clear decision, that's why I did that. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, so I have a couple of quick questions, comments. One of the reasons we changed the language from clean and renewable energy resolution to something that was encompassing the communities is specifically because some direction we got from Council Member Scipio, that what are you doing for my ward and their suffering. And that was why we got item number 4, which was develop programs to assist vulnerable communities. If our committee as a whole decides that does not belong in this particular resolution, but somewhere else, I would move to strike that out. Same way, promote green job training, job creation, and economic growth. Now, the reason we have that is, again, green jobs and efficiency jobs are growing 12 times the growth rate of the US economy. And this was pre-COVID, 12 times. So are our citizens ready for those jobs? And if not, what can we do for colleges, community, universities, the city? What can we do to prepare our graduating high schoolers or somebody to be ready for those jobs? That was why we had item number 5. So if as a committee, we think these don't belong here and belong somewhere else, I'm okay to remove that. But this whole resolution was a holistic approach to solve several problems. If you're going to get hung up and not achieve any goals, then Yeah, I move to take them out. So that we have 8 items. We'd get rid of 2 right away. And I can also say item number 6 was that support for the federal thing. I'm okay to get rid of it. It was just a support. It cost nothing. And I know the left-leaning people would support it. The right-leaning people may not support it. And again, it's just support. So that takes out item 4, 5, and 6. Talking about the action plan, I know, Helen, you've been working hard on the action plan. The only thing we wanted to put here is how is the action plan taking steps towards achieving whatever goals are set here. And maybe annually or every 2 years, trying to look at those goals and say, are we doing it? Do you need any more money? Do you need any more personnel? How can we achieve those goals? So having the committee review what we achieved and what the plan says, and can we get to the targets? That was the whole intent behind the review of the strategic action plan. And that is items 7 and 8. So again, we could remove 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, really. So we're left with 1, 2, and 3, and we can go over 1, 2, and 3. Number 3 is 40% reduction by 2025. That is Governor Cooper's executive order. Again, that is a goal, and we always should have aspirational goals that are sort of challenging. Otherwise, it's business as usual. If you want to discuss that specific number, we can. The way I see it is we need to change the way we look at the whole picture. For example, when you guys did the public safety building, you did some lighting upgrades for $330,000, and you, in one of the reports, said the investment paid back within 2.5 years. That's the kind of projects we need. If an investment gets paid back in 2.5 years, starting month 31, which is past 2.5 years, you start actually saving money beyond recovering an investment. What are the projects that we can find that can actually save you money, save the taxpayers money, and those savings can be reinvested in something else? So that item number 3 about energy efficiency is important. And like Lee said, if I had to choose one thing, it would be the first step would be energy efficiency. We can't slap solar panels on anything until we reduce our consumption. So energy efficiency is number 1.
Is that the number 3 resolution?
Yes, number 1 as in priority number 1. Sorry, yes, number 3.
No.
Please.
I think, well, I mean, here are just a couple of thoughts. One thing that I don't want to get lost in all of this is that as a committee, it's so hard for us to like get stuff done and do things in only 1 hour per month. Before it was every other month. And you know, in the first time we met, at least an hour of that was taken up with legal sort of do's and don'ts, which I think directed us not to communicate altogether via email. So if this 1 hour thing is the only time that we have to all discuss something or to even like break out, I don't know what we can do as a committee. It's going to be they're going to be pretty low. It's going to be a low bar. So that's something that is, I think, like kind of frustrating to not be able to worry
Yes.
about how we can discuss and how we can like get more time to do things.
I've heard you guys, and I promise I'm working on looking at getting more time added. For instance, this one's 1 hour and 15 minutes. So I promise that I hear you guys, just as assurance.
But I just have to ask, like, it seems like a really, frankly, screwy way to run a committee, to say you can only work on the issues of the committee when the committee's all together. I mean, if faculty governance worked like that, colleges would grind to a freaking halt.
Right. Okay.
Right?
Well, again,
people work outside of that. You say, I take this task, you test this task, you work on it, you collaborate. you don't all meet as a group, but you do have to come back together to like share what you've done. Like, isn't there a
I
wiggle
want to
here that
remind
we can
you
keep
that
working?
the main thing that the ethics folks said and that the attorney's office said is that as long as it is not the majority of members, if that group is less than 6, it's not an official public meeting. That was the main hesitation that they had. That is when it crosses that line. So if 5 of you were
groups of 5 to work on things. Okay. The other thing I think for so that would be a big thing in terms of like, you know, committee unity, and maybe we can go ahead and like start working on email to break out into groups of 5 on things. I think the resolution itself, we're a city and climate change is a global problem. So I think we have to figure out how to make a difference in our city, you know, sort of like regardless of the world, and tie that into what, and make it clear that that's what we're doing. And I think for our committee, we need to, you know, I think we need to be able to break things off into groups and sort of like get to know people and get to know what people are interested in, and how we can use each other's strengths to sort of move this along. I think that's all.
Helen, can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
So the request to shorten the resolution was based on what? The number of action items in the resolution, the length of the resolution? What was specifically the concern?
Yeah, I can't exactly say, but based on what was communicated to me, the length of it overall, I'll just say most resolutions that are passed or presented are in 2 pages. So I think that was just the length itself was what they wanted to see pared down. And I think Councilmember Bessie had shared that with Rajesh beforehand. So if he gave you a better idea of what exactly he meant, maybe you can share that. But that's the impression I got, is just, I think maybe reducing the number of items that were included is what he meant.
Yes, so we had discussed that a couple months back. The first resolution we voted on, which was much longer, it had 13 items, and it went into very big detail. Like every new building that city builds, we want them to build it higher than the current standards, energy efficiency standards or whatever. Or if you're placing a building on a site, place it so that you can in the future put solar panels on it. So it had that kind of language, and I understood that was way too much detail in this thing, which I now, in my naivety, I didn't realize that. So that can move to the action plan or recommendations or something else. So I understand that. So my feeling was that Councilmember Bessie had already said those things, which we had already re-voted on the redone resolution and had done that, but I didn't realize that until 2 weeks ago. He told me he did not like the Carbon Dividend Act, and that is when, okay, well, that would be, yeah, it's just support for it, but that he thinks that is not something that looks good on anybody's resume right now in the election time. So yeah, so those are the 2 items that Councilmember Bessie said. But yeah, I'm okay to start striking things down. And the only reason I'm taking a lot of interest in this is because I've done this for different cities, counties, universities, school districts over the last 25 years. So I have a little bit of insight into this. So energy efficiency is one that we should probably keep. The 80% target, now here's my thinking. If you give me just 3 minutes, I'll probably explain quickly and see if you have any questions. So if Duke is going to meet 20% of the target, that means the city has to meet 60% of whatever that target is. And that target should be much reduced if you actually put in energy efficiency as step one. So first, reduce your consumption and then look at the targets. So anyway, so the targets are reduced and we only have to do 60%. Now, I don't think anybody in their right mind would say city has to generate all their power with solar panels on their roofs. It is not possible because we don't have enough space, we don't have enough investment money. That is not good. That is not right. Even I wouldn't recommend it. So what I would recommend is do a few solar panels in places that people can see. And that could be less than 0.5% of what you guys need for energy. And that could be on the city hall or somewhere on the parking deck, somewhere where it is visible to show our residents that the city is doing something. It might be cosmetic, but it shows something. So 0.5% or something very small would be an investment on actual solar panels. The remainder should come through, Duke has two plans. If you give me a second, 2 plans. One is called Renewable Advantage. So you pay about 10% more in your energy bills and Duke will go put solar panels somewhere else. So it is talking to that item number 2, which says encourage the utility providers to meet the same target. So by paying Duke 10% more in electricity and forcing Duke to go put solar panels is what we need, because they can do it more efficiently and they can do it more cost effectively. So that is the intent, that you sign a power purchase agreement with Duke or a third party. Third party will be cheaper than Duke. And sign a power purchase agreement like City of Charlotte did, and purchase your power from a different source. What that means, now I'll tell you what, my house is completely shaded by trees. I cannot put solar panels. I believe in this, but I cannot do it. So what I did was I have a power purchase agreement with a third party. So all my power, although it comes from Duke, I pay 10% more in cost so that all my power is renewable energy sourced. And that's what I'm asking city to do. And if looking at all the 6 or 7 big things that you have that consume electricity, I'm thinking at $10,000 the first year, we can meet our target. The second year, it'll be $20,000 extra in power bills. Third year would be 30,000, all the way to about 100,000 or less by year 2030. And that, just doing that, the power purchase agreement, we meet our 80% clean target. So the question to the city and the energy manager and all the big brains that city has doing this thing, have you guys looked at Duke's renewable?
Yes, we have.
And the second one is the green source advantage.
Yes, we have.
And what did you guys come? It is 1.2 cents a kilowatt hour extra in charge.
It's more about the length of payback. And this has actually been what has been the reservation of our a lot of our financial team in the past as well. I think that the long-term paybacks are just not as attractive. And I recognize that is, what has to happen at some point if we want to commit to this. So
right, this is not a payback though.
And I just want to let you know that that's sort of the feedback we've received. So we have recommended solar panels in the past. We've recommended looking into that stuff, and it's not up to us, unfortunately, to just go ahead and decide to do that. So that's just where we are.
Okay, so I have to clarify something.
Can we just come back to my question for a minute? Because I'm trying to get some clarity around, because it seems like we're kind of in circles about what should come off, what should stay, how we should go about. I'm trying to get some clarity around what is it that they were looking for us to come back and do? It seems like to me, if they gave us some specifics around what they were looking for, that we could maybe still meet. If it's around the number of action items, then most certainly we need to look at what are the top 2 or 3 items that we're saying, here's the resolutions that we want to move to. If it was just about the length of it and not necessarily the number of action items, could it be that we take out some of the specifics around the action items to get to the length that the ideal length that they're looking for? So that's the reason that I was asking about what was their concern around the length of the resolution.
Yeah, and Amber, to clarify, they did mention both things, both shortening, like taking out some of the number of details we put in there, but Councilmember Bessie did also specifically request more realistic percentage goals and timelines. So that's why we're discussing this as well. So both things were mentioned.
Okay, and so a follow-up question. So I know at one point at the last meeting, we were talking about creating addendums to the resolution so that it wouldn't necessarily be a part of the resolution, but it would either be there for clarity's sake or for reference sake. So is there any way that we can maybe agree on what the top 2 or 3 items are that we think that we can get some support around, and then take the other remaining 4 or 5 items and put as an addendum piece to the resolution with some detail around why we were suggesting these items be a part of the resolution, but we want it to be a part of the record so that the city would understand the work and the conversations. Is that possible?
I like that idea. And I think paring it down to 2 or 3 would more be to the taste of the council people as well. And I think another one of those things were a detailed specific action plans. I think that was something that I heard that they recommended. So I think that would be appropriate as a group to agree on that. The only thing I would like to add is whatever those 2 or 3 things are, I would like to have the support of the sustainability staff before it goes out the door. So if even with the solar panels, for example, there seem to be some maybe some issues around that. So if we continue to pursue that, then is it possible that we could get whatever those issues were in the past in front of us, so we could look, so Raji and the group could look at that and make sure we don't repeat those mistakes, and see if we can formulate it in such a way that it will be palatable by everyone. But if we do not get the support, let's say the sustainability staff, then I don't see why we would pursue it. I think, some other action plans would be better. But so that's the only thing I would say. I would like whatever we do, whatever 2 or 3 we choose, we do have the support right up front that it'll be something that the sustainability staff will support as well.
So piggyback on that, because I think that's a great idea. So should that not be our starting point? Should we not start at the place where we had agreement from both the staff and the committee amongst the items? So out of those 8 items, were there 2 or 3 items in which both the staff, sustainability staff, and the committee agreed upon? And could that not be our starting point instead of us trying to, seems like we're working backwards instead of working from a common ground. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
It does. It's clearly stated. I agree. And I think that if we're going to move on some things, then that should be our starting point, and we should go from there. I agree with you.
So there's one.
I'm sorry, Rajesh. Dane had his hand raised. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
He's
I didn't
on
see
mute.
her.
Yeah.
sorry, I was simply going to say I was been listening to all the comments and the feedback on the individual items, and here in the chat are the three things that it didn't pop into it. Damn it! I thought I copied and pasted out of Google Docs. Fine. That seemed to be I might just have to say it. The things that folks agreed on. Although there you go. Like it seems like the transition to 100% clean renewable by 2050. That's kind of have to be there if we're going to have the whole front matter. But if we take out the 2030, like the interim targets, right, it may be a little less palatable because it seems farther out. The game we've been playing with ourselves as a society for decades, right, with climate change. But nonetheless, then the second is conservation methods. If energy efficiency. I don't know. That seemed that there was terribly. But anyways, and the third was encourage community providers to meet the same targets. Like that's of the ones we talk about today. The ones that folks didn't say, okay, we could do without that. Now, what is it starting as a starting point for the next conversation? Looking at just this, how does this look?
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start. I wholly agree with the energy efficiency thing, and I even stated that in the meeting, I believe. I think that that's sort of where we already were looking at doing some things. So we've sort of already started thinking of it and implementing energy efficiency. So fully agree with that one. I think that's incredibly important if we're going to have this conversation. I think that a longer term goal I am more comfortable with, because at that point we would also be able to gauge a little bit more of how successful Duke Energy is going to be in their goals as well. I think we will be relying on them a lot to help us meet these goals. And as of right now, I know that they have put it out that that is what their goals are, but it can be difficult to know that that's exactly the numbers that they're going to hit on those exact dates at this point. So I'm definitely more comfortable with a longer term goal. And I think that way, if we did do that, we could come back with a resolution after a few years and say, now that we've seen this amount of progress from both our city operations and Duke Energy, we think that maybe this is achievable after all, or, we can set another target by 2040 or something. So I think that is something to consider too. I don't necessarily disagree with the community one. I think that that's just difficult. Like I don't have any control over that, and I'm not sure who does necessarily. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that one. But I think council members probably are aware of that also. So yeah, those are my 2 cents.
So I have a quick request. I would love to meet one-on-one or one-on-five with the energy manager or the technical people on the city side to look at these goals, because I do have a way that we can achieve these without the payback issues that Helen mentioned, without extreme financial problem. And again, this is, now we're getting into the nitty gritty that I don't think the whole committee needs to be bothered with the details. But if that is okay with the committee, I would love the opportunity to meet with them to go and say, okay, this 80% clean, the 80% target by 2030, should it be 50%? Should it be 30%? Should it be 80%? I would love to talk and look at some numbers, do some, use a calculator and say, this is how, do you think this will work? This will not work? So those technical things, is there a way that I can maybe meet for an hour with somebody, whoever the technical people are?
Well, I'm sorry, real quick, Leah, to respond to that, that's actually why I included the goal in the sustainability plan that I created. That came from research done by my energy manager and myself, and based it on what I thought were reasonable energy efficiency goals. So that's why I included that in there. For those of you who may not have watched the last 5 minutes of that committee meeting, or the goal that I set in my plan that I created was 15% by 2025. I know it's not 2030, but that was based on that research. So that's where that number came from. Again, directly based on research done by me and my staff.
Right. So are you open, or is your staff open to meeting with me one-on-one? And this is what I do for a living. Usually I would chat people to.
I would pose the question.
Yeah.
Would you be comfortable adding that 15% by 2025 goal in?
There's a big difference between 15% by 2025 and 80% by 2030.
There is. And that's why that was the basis of my not being able to support that one, is because I had already had that research done. And that's what our numbers showed.
So the problem with 15% by 2025 is in energy savings, we are not meeting Governor Cooper's target or the mayor's target or the Paris Climate Accord.
Yeah, but I think it might be a palatable starting point, considering we haven't started yet on any.
Right. So again, I would like to meet with somebody to look at some numbers, and you might convince me very easily, and
I know it's not up to me. I would be in favor of having Rajesh meet with someone. Another like committee-wide issue, I think, is that, John Larson, when he came, said that we should be like weighing in on things for the city. And I just don't know how we do that if we don't have, if we're not asked, or if there isn't, if there's not some kind of a mechanism so that when someone somewhere is like building a new building or whatever, like, how do we get to weigh in on that?
I think that you guys don't give yourselves enough credit. I'm going to be honest. This one was easy because it was requested that you guys take a look at this resolution. If you guys are paying attention, or you're like listening in on a city council meeting or another one of these city committee meeting or council committee meetings, and you're like, wait a second, I think our committee could make a useful recommendation, or like provide some useful information about that topic. Create an information item, just put together. I think Stephanie in the last meeting had suggested this, just creating, like, going back to the energy efficiency for vulnerable communities. I think that was even the example she used in the last meeting, is just like taking that topic and creating just an information item about what that could look like for us, and some suggestions. And then you send that. We would put it into the official system, but council would see it. And like, that's one way to do it. Because you're not just always going to have people knocking the door down to send you guys stuff. But yeah, definitely. I mean, if you're just involved, or like I said, if you just come across something that you think would be a good topic for you guys to discuss, bring it up. Like, that's what you do in those 2 months off, is you keep up to date with like what is happening in your community, and maybe find some opportunities. And then that way you come to the committee meetings and say, yeah, I was reading the paper and I saw this, or I was watching the last council meeting and somebody mentioned this and it made me think of this. So what about this? I know I said this a lot, but I don't have a specific idea. I hope that helps clarify a little bit.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Okay.
And we do have a Google Docs where we have some action plans going, and I would love to have more people participate and write out their ideas or something, because Sarah has been also telling me that we need to hear from every ward, every constituent on this committee, and try to get more items that mean more or talk to their heart for more people. So yeah, going back to Leah's point, we need many more ideas. This is just one resolution that was on the front burner, so we're talking about it, but we have a whole bunch of other work to do. So yeah, the
And
more we do,
for the sake of time, we are at 6:15. Real quick, I'm going to call for an approval of the August minutes since we do have a quorum now. So does anybody move to approve those minutes?
I move to approve it.
I second.
All right, great. And then I think that is everything. We'll bump the rest of the stuff to the next meeting. So what we're going to do in order to meet that November deadline to get this resolution back to the committee, we are going to hold a special meeting. I'm looking at October 15th, so that'll be 2 weeks from today. And the goal of that meeting will be to present the amended resolution with, I think, most of the changes you guys mentioned. If we need to discuss something in a little bit more detail, we'll have an hour. I'm not going to make that one any longer just because this will only be to pass that resolution. So does that make sense to everybody? Do you have any questions? Okay, and so I'm going to be looking to set it again at 5 to 6, our normal time on that Thursday. We're going to need a quorum to officially vote that through. So whatever you guys vote there, we will send it off to council again and go from there. So that's the plan. Yeah, and then our next official committee meeting will be the first Thursday of December. I don't have a date in front of me, but that'll be the next official one. So
I have a quick comment. Since we're so close to elections and a lot of people are so busy,
yes,
should we postpone going to the council until the following? Because right now, nobody's going to be focused on.
Yeah, Johnny, I'll leave that up to you. I know that December, they aren't taking matters like this, so it would have to be the January meeting. So I don't know if you guys want to wait that long or not.
Apologize for coming in a little late. The reason why I mentioned November was simply because of that. I didn't know if the committee would be comfortable waiting until January before taking it back. It's something that, you know, is important, and I wanted to get back in front of council. So that was the reason why. So what's everyone's thoughts on that? I mean, you're looking at January if we postpone.
Well, Councilman Bessie is the one who kind of said, why are you in such a hurry? And I said, well, the time is ticking on the global climate crisis, but he's the one who recommended that. That's why I bring it up, because most likely he won't be here past, I mean, he definitely will not be in the council past that. And probably, I'm bringing up what he said. So I'm okay.
I can actually postpone us going back to council until January. You know, my thing is, my goal is for us to go as a united front when we go back. And if that helps that possibility be a little bit higher, I'm definitely for it. Because one of the things I wanted to say to the committee is we want to deal with this global crisis just like you do. And sometimes what we have to do, we have an obligation to provide counsel our professional opinion. And we understand that you can have a different opinion, and we're not opposed to that. In fact, your ideas are greatly appreciated. And so what we'd like to do is nothing more than work together to make sure that we find something that works for our Salem as well as the community. So I'm open to it. Helen, what are your thoughts about November versus January and how that looks?
Yeah,
because
I think that if we can reach a compromise, if the committee feels like that compromise can be reached within that 1 hour time frame, and for everybody to approve that resolution, then I don't see why we should postpone it. However, I think your point about making sure we're all on the same page and are comfortable presenting this is a good one. So I'll leave that up to the committee, because if they think it's going to be a longer discussion than an hour to reach that compromise, then we should postpone.
Well, I think if we can come to some agreement now, that we would start from the items that we have some kind of agreement on, I think that it would make it more likely that we would be able to get and reach a conclusion based on us starting from those 3 items that we have some agreement, and we can hammer out the details of those 3 things. I think that probably would be a good. He wants to play. He's like, I need some attention.
Yes, he's been good so far. Sorry about that.
So that would be my suggestion. And then again, understanding that if there's a way in which we can offer those the other 4 items that don't make it into the final resolution as part of some type of addendum or some suggestions are strongly encouraged, then I think we could go that way. I think because I listen a lot because I'm not real knowledgeable, and so I'm learning. But what I am good at is working to consensus. And I just think that that anytime we're going to get to a consensus, there has to be understanding that some will get some of what they want and the other side will get some of what they want. But in the end, we make a decision that the agreement is what's best overall. And I think that's what I would offer.
Okay. So here's what I'm gonna think about. We'll work like we're going in November, and we will see how our progress is, and then we'll make a decision at that point. Does that sound fair to everybody?
I think that's good.
Yeah. And let's work though like we're going in November.
Right. Yeah, I'm all for it because it's to me it's a very, very urgent thing. It was just one of the council members wanted, and of course Miss Amber Baker, she's running for an election, and your sign is in my yard, by the way. So yes, so that's why I was saying. But my offer is still open, guys, that if you guys want to have coffee with me, whoever is the technical person on the city, I'd love to sit and go over my ideas, and then you can say I'm crazy, and then I'll back off. But I just want you to listen. Yeah.
Excuse me, here's what I'll do.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into how Helen's going to direct her staff, but with you. And hear your idea. How's that?
Oh, sorry, I missed that. There was some beeping noise.
Okay. I'm saying to you, I'm not going to direct Helen as to how to deal with how she handles that with her staff, but I would like to meet with you and hear your ideas.
Yes,
and that doesn't just go for Mr. Ross, that goes for anybody on the committee. Okay.
Sounds great.
So if you all would reach out to me, and let's set up something. Because I think a lot of times what happens is, but a little bit of more communication will solve a lot of confusion, and we'll find out that we really are working toward the same thing. Mm-hmm. So I look forward to it.
All right, great. Well, thank you, everybody. Anybody move to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
All right.
Okay.
All right, great. Thank you, guys. And I'll send out a calendar invite as soon as I can for that October 15th date. Thank you, guys.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Have a good weekend, everybody.
You too.
You too.